We the people have become historical witnesses. The impossible transformed to the possible. The dream of the dream have become a reality in this day. We shall overcome. We shall overcome by moving beyond the dream to write a new vision. My eyes have seen the glory, witnessing a sea of humanity, a symphony, if you will, of the ringing of freedom. Freedom from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Freedom from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Freedom from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Freedom. We as a people, we shall overcome. Passengers of the mothership, we can now form a more perfect union. Establish justice, ensure. We the people, we shall overcome. Hi, my name is Dr. Michael James. I am the author of 2 books, Brother to Brother, A Message of Hope, and the second book is called Absent. Today we will briefly talk about both books, which is a must-read for the Black community. Brother to Brother gives a depiction of the positive attributes of Black men, how we have been determined to be positive fathers, to participate in the community, and these are things that the media does not show concerning Black men. Brother to Brother talks about the spirit to break the chains of slavery. Did you know that aboard the mothership, the most feared person was the Black man? The Black man who couldn't even talk the same languages, yet we found the way aboard the mothership to communicate that we refused to go silently into the night. We were a force to be reckoned with, and this book talks about the resurrections aboard the mothership to the point that they would beat us, they would feed us to the sharks, they would make examples of us. They did everything to strike fear into the hearts of Black men, yet they feared us because we had a spirit that would refuse to die, and that's what chapter 1, Brother to Brother, talks about. Chapter 2 talks about when we came to America, how that force, that power to be free by any means necessary continued through Black men. Black men such as Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner. These were men that refused to go silently into the night. Although they knew that death was the sentence, these men were determined, and they even talked to their families that before I be a slave, I'll be dead in my grave. And we don't know concerning this history because this real history is not taught in the public schools. These men were forces to be reckoned with, and they had the power, they had the sight to say, we still refuse to be slaves. And then came the Black Power movement, a movement of young Black people, mostly young Black men, who said, I am proud to be Black. I am proud to be what God has made me. And that spirit caught fire throughout the 60s Dr. King and that generation had to deal with the fact that we have to wrestle with these young black warriors who now say, before I be a slave, I'll be dead in my grave. And they found the way, they found common ground so that the march on Washington could be peaceful. But that spirit surged in black young men to say, we refuse to be a slave. Part 2, so let freedom ring. Part 2 talks about the Black Panthers. As soon as you say the Black Panthers to people today, they'll say, oh, they were the militant group that just wanted to carry guns. That is so far from the truth. Read my book. The Black Panthers were restoring the village, people. They were young black men and young black women who decided to quit begging for jobs, decided to quit begging for health care for our people. So these young brothers, Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, got together and they began to do fundraisers. And do you know, 30 years before the lunch program came through the federal government, these young black brothers shamed the federal government into feeding poor children that were coming to school hungry, coming home hungry. These young brothers fed 5,000 folks, 5,000 children, a hot breakfast, not cereal, a hot breakfast free every morning. They began to be so powerful within the community because back then it was sickle cell that was killing our people. But folks, there was no health care. These young brothers got together and they decided that there was going to be free health care, especially for babies and senior citizens. And they became a threat to the status quo. And that's why now you read about them being murdered. I think it was over 40-something bullets shot by the police and just one bullet back from the Panthers. They had to destroy those brothers because they were restoring the village. They were saying that young black men were the providers and the protectors of the village. Moving on to chapter 7 of this book. Right here in Chicago, I research powerful black men doing things in the community that you will never hear of. Concerned Christian men, fathers who care, Reeving fellows, family focus, on and on. Black Star Project. These are black men that are determined to give the black community a different definition of black men. Because what you see on TV is, of course, drive-by shootings, gang wars. These are not the real gangs. These are young punks, renegades they call them, renegades that is simply trying to make a name for themselves at the expense of young children. Notice that they always kill the babies, the children. Every now and then they may find their target, but it's to just simply gain the reputation. But the point being, you never hear about so many young black brothers in the community that is doing so many positive things to rebuild the black community. The Nation of Islam says that we are the providers and the protectors of the community. And just that thought, just that seed now has begun to catch fire. And this book, Brother to Brother, talks about that powerful spirit now that's beginning to grab positive black men. Brother to Brother message of hope is just that. It is a message of hope. Chapter 7, Changing of the Guards. Changing of the Guards talk about the black church during the 60s. The black church was a force to be reckoned with. Anything that affected the black community, pastors of every major city came together in a coalition of black churches. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference came about because of racism, Jim Crow. These were black leaders, mostly black men, that came together to say, now is the time for us to begin to address the issue. And the churches, during the children's crusade, it was the black church that galvanized thousands of children and thousands of people to march for their cause. Changing of the Guards said that it was time for new leadership. The old leadership of a pastor just simply coming in, preaching pie in the sky gospel is dead. The new leaders are social leaders that begin to preach and connect the gospel to the things that people go through today. And not only that, after Sunday, he moves his congregation out into what they call social action. This book talks about the changing of the guards. This book predicts 2 months before Barack Obama became president that he indeed would become president. This book is a must-read for the black community. Brother to Brother, A Message of Hope is a must-read for every child, every boy, every mother, to say that, you know, there are some good things going on in the black community. My second book, Absent, the subtitle says it all. The assimilation of African American males into non-being. The assimilation of males into non-being. This book talks about the destruction of the African villages, how they came over to Africa to get us. This book talks about the laws and the policies. Our people do not know this. This is a must-read also. Why is it that we see all of our young black men on the corner with their pants hanging down? Why is it that over 80% now, close to 80% of the prison population throughout the nation are black men? Your perception may be, those black boys don't want nothing. Black men just don't want to work. That is so far from the truth. There's a system, folks, that have been put in place to keep us down, to keep us in slavery. During the 60s, when your mother was getting welfare, she was getting rent, she was getting food stamps, she was getting clothing, she was getting her light paid, her gas paid. Someone came up with the thing that, wait a minute, let's change the policy. If the father's in the house, whether he's working or not, she will be cut off from her whole benefits. This is what happened, folks. Black men were pushed out of the household. Black men back in the 50s and 60s were working men. They had factory jobs, they had part-time jobs, but they were forced out no matter how much they made. And then the economy made sure that they were not hiring black men. And that chapter, folks, read it so that you can get the understanding. The unwanted rooster in the hen house. Our fathers, our uncles and brothers during the 50s and 60s were forced out of the house. They didn't just choose to leave. Families then were families. Families back then sat at the table. Families back then went to church together. The attack was on the black man in the family. Chapter 3 talks about gangs, real gangs. Folks, the vice lords, The GDs, the real original gangs, were young black boys who couldn't find jobs, and they got together and they began to create businesses. They began to create income for themselves. They did not sell drugs. This book gives you the whole picture of the slave plantation, how they decided that they would just put the black men in prison and then pay him, get this, $5 a month to receive your calls to book a flight, $5 a month to make your Jordans that cost almost $200. This book talks about the total attack on black men, and it will give you a better understanding of exactly what's going on. Both books is a must read. Both books will open up your eyes so that you can see exactly what's going on, so that you can perceive the black man in a different light. Thank you very much. They should have closed with music.
That's a wrap. They're going to conclude it there. That was great, man.
Oh man, thank you, man.